On October 3rd, 2024, about 20 minutes before I locked up for the night, a man in his late 50s coasted a 3-year-old SUV into my bay with the engine ticking like a clock that was about to stop for good. He wasn't angry. He looked betrayed. He had babied this thing, every oil change on time, never skipped a service, never beat on it. And at 96,000 miles, it was drinking a quart of oil every 800 miles and rattling on cold mornings like a coffee can full of bolts. He set his folder of receipts on my bench and said, "My last truck went 280,000 miles and never asked for anything. I did everything right this time. So why is this one already dying?" That question is the reason I am making this video. Because he wasn't unlucky, and he didn't do a single thing wrong. Today, I am going to show you the real reason modern engines don't last the way the engines you grew up with did. I will explain why a motor built in the last 10 or 15 years can wear out in half the miles of one built in 1998, even when you maintain it flawlessly. It isn't a conspiracy, and it isn't planned obsolescence the way people picture it. It is something quieter, baked into the metal before the car ever reaches you. And once you understand it, you'll look at every new car on the lot differently. I have been turning wrenches for over 2 decades. I worked on the engines that earned their reputation, the old iron block sedans, the simple, naturally aspirated trucks, the motors that ran forever because they were never asked to do much. And I have watched, year after year, as the engines coming into my bay got smaller, got more complicated, and started failing younger. The men and women driving them keep saying the same sentence the man with the SUV said, "I did everything right." And they did. The problem isn't the owner. The problem is what the engine was asked to be. Here is the uncomfortable truth almost nobody explains. Modern engines are not designed to last. They are designed to pass. They are engineered to hit aggressive government fuel economy and emissions targets, and longevity quietly became the thing that got traded away to reach those numbers. Every gallon saved and every gram of carbon cut came from somewhere, and a lot of it came out of the engine's lifespan. Let me walk you through exactly how, piece by piece, because each decision makes perfect sense on its own, and together they are slowly killing the modern motor. It starts with downsizing. 20 years ago, if a vehicle needed a certain amount of power, the manufacturer gave it a big engine, a 4.0-liter 6 or a 5.0-liter 8, running relaxed, loafing along at low pressure, and barely breaking a sweat. A big engine working easy lasts a long time, but a big engine sips more fuel, so to hit the new mileage numbers, automakers shrank the engines. 6 cylinders became turbocharged 4 cylinders. V8 engines became turbo 6s. A modern 1.5-liter turbo can make the power an old 3.0-liter engine made, but to do it, that little engine has to work exponentially harder. And that is where the lifespan starts bleeding away. Think of it like 2 workers carrying the same heavy load up a flight of stairs all day. One is a big, strong man taking it in stride. The other is a smaller guy straining with everything he has on every single step. Both get the load up the stairs. But which one is worn out by the end of the year? Your engine is that smaller worker now. A downsized turbo engine runs at far higher cylinder pressures, far higher combustion temperatures, and far higher average load than the big lazy engines it replaced. Higher pressure and heat mean more stress on the bearings, the pistons, the rings, the parts that determine how long a motor lives. The engine isn't broken, it's just exhausted every mile of its life. Then came the oil. To squeeze out more fuel economy, manufacturers moved to ultra-thin oils. Where shops once poured in 10W30 or 5W30, the spec sheet now calls for 0W20, 0W16, even 0W8 in some engines. Thinner oil creates less friction, and less friction means better mileage. But thinner oil also means a thinner protective film between metal parts that are slamming together thousands of times a minute. And here is the part that should bother you. To make those thin oils work, engineers tighten the clearances between the crankshaft and the bearings. The cushion of oil holding those parts apart is now microscopically thin. On the old engines, that oil film was thick enough to swallow a little dirt, a little debris, a little neglect. On a modern engine, that margin is nearly gone. A tiny piece of grit that an old motor would have shrugged off now acts like sandpaper on the bearings, and that is how you get a perfectly maintained engine spinning a bearing and self-destructing at 90,000 miles. Now stack direct injection on top of that. This one is huge and almost no driver understands it. On the engines that ran forever, fuel was sprayed onto the back of the intake valves before it entered the cylinder. That constant wash of fuel, full of detergents, scrubbed the valves clean every second the engine ran. The engine cleaned itself. Modern direct injection engines spray the fuel straight into the combustion chamber instead, because it is more efficient, but that means fuel never touches the intake valves anymore. Nothing washes them. So oil vapor and exhaust gases drift across those hot valves and bake into hard carbon, layer after layer, year after year. The airflow chokes down. You get rough idle, hesitation, lost power, misfires on cold starts. And here is the cruel twist. Those fuel injector cleaner bottles you pour in the tank, they physically cannot reach the back of those valves. The only real fix is pulling the intake apart and blasting the carbon off by hand. A job that can run many hundreds of dollars on a car that is only a few years old. Your grandfather's engine never needed that. It cleaned itself for free, every mile. Direct injection and turbocharging together created something else the old engines never had to fear, a violent phenomenon called low-speed pre-ignition. When you lug one of these little turbo engines at low engine revolutions per minute under heavy load, for example when climbing a grade or pulling away uphill, the fuel can ignite at the wrong instant and create a pressure spike so brutal it can reach over 1,000 pounds per square inch inside the cylinder, while normal combustion produces about half of that. One bad spike can crack a piston or snap a connecting rod instantly. Manufacturers have spent years reformulating oil just to suppress it. The old, low-stress engines simply never operated anywhere near that edge. Today's engines live right on it, every day, balanced between maximum efficiency and self-destruction. And then there is the maintenance schedule itself, maybe the quietest killer of all. To make a car look cheaper to own, manufacturers stretched oil change intervals out to 10,000 miles and beyond, and put a little light on the dash to tell you when. On paper, it sounds great. In the real world, those downsized turbo engines run hot and tend to wash unburned fuel down past the rings, diluting the oil and breaking it down faster than the schedule assumes, especially if you do short trips and the engine never fully heats up. So the oil is worn out long before the light ever comes on, and that thin, tight clearance, hard-working engine is running on degraded oil for thousands of miles. The schedule that was designed to look convenient is quietly starving the motor. Now, I promised you the truth, and the truth cuts both ways, so let me be straight with you. This does not mean every modern engine is junk, and it does not mean you should panic. Most engines from the careful manufacturers still go the distance when they're looked after. The catastrophic failures tend to cluster around specific engine families that push the envelope too far, not across the whole industry. and the car makers know. Some have already gone back to adding a second set of port injectors just to keep the valves clean. Several have publicly admitted they pushed too hard and are redesigning the next generation of engines to be more durable. The pendulum is starting to swing back. So this isn't doom. It's just reality, the trade-off nobody put on the window sticker. So what do you actually do with this? Because here's where you take the power back. You can't change how your engine was built, but you can refuse to maintain it like it's 1995. Change your oil at half the interval. The manual brags about, if it says 10,000, do 5,000. And use the exact oil weight specified, never a heavier one to protect it, because that defeats the tight clearances it was built around. If you've got direct injection, run a quality detergent through the tank and plan on a real intake cleaning somewhere around 60,000 to 80,000 miles before the carbon ever chokes you. Don't lug a turbo engine at low RPM under load. Let it downshift and spin up instead of straining. Let it warm up for 1 minute before you ask anything of it, and let the turbo cool for 30 seconds before you shut it off after a hard run. And avoid those rock-bottom oil filters, because that thin oil cushion can't afford to swallow debris a cheap filter let through. None of this is expensive. All of it directly counters the exact weaknesses I just walked you through. The man with the rattling SUV stood in my bay quiet for a long moment after I explained all of this. Then he said something I've heard 100 times since. So it was never going to last, no matter what I did. And the honest answer is, not the way he expected it to. No, but the next one can go a lot further, because now he knows what he's actually buying and how to fight back against the way it was built. That knowledge is worth more than any single repair. Modern engines don't fail because they're badly made. They fail because they were asked to do the impossible, make big power, sip fuel, and burn clean, all from a tiny motor running on the edge of its own limits. Something had to give, and what gave was the one number that doesn't show up in an advertisement: how long it lasts. Once you see that clearly, you stop blaming yourself, you stop trusting the maintenance light, and you start protecting your engine on your terms instead of theirs. If this changed how you think about that efficient little engine under your hood, hit the like button so more drivers see it before they buy their next car. Subscribe if you want weekly breakdowns that put you back in control instead of at the mercy of the dealer. And if you have ever had a modern engine wear out way too early, or an old one that refused to die, drop it in the comments, because those stories tell the real story the brochures never will. The next video exposes another quiet decision hiding in your owner's manual that is costing drivers thousands without them ever realizing it.